Flying Casuals brought to you by Patreon supporters Brent, Andy Dugan, David Bush, Rob Patsky, Jory Webb, Kelly Breckner, Nate Edison, and Wes Anderson. May the Force be with you. Vader is waiting for me in the corridor ahead, standing in silence, his lightsaber already pulsing red. He knew I was coming, that I was on board his engine of destruction. Does he know what I've done? Have all my efforts been for naught? Why won't he say anything? As motionless as a statue. 19 years. 19 years since I left him to die. 19 years of reliving his corruption every night in my dreams. What does he look like under that mask? What does he see through those ruby lenses? A friend? An enemy? A relic? He appears so calm, so controlled, but I can feel his rage, seething like the Perdition Nebula beneath that heartless faceplate. His fury threatens to overwhelm him, just as it always did, but he keeps it in check. I can't help but be impressed. The Emperor has taught my former Padawan well. I can only imagine the poison that has spilled from Palpatine's lips since Mustafar. Savor your hatred, my apprentice. Nurture it. Let it empower you. Let it bring you strength. I always knew this day would come. I just didn't know where or when. I certainly never imagined it would be in a place like this, on a planet killer the like of which the galaxy has never seen. A million voices cry out as one, washing over me, their pain my own. Finally, Vader steps forward to meet me. My lightsaber ignites, the vibration of the power cell rising at my arm. I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan. We meet again at last. The voice is unrecognizable. How little of my friend is left. Another memory assaults me. A woman lying on a bed, her breath shallow. There's good in him. Did she really believe that? After everything he had done? If she did, wouldn't she still be here? Wouldn't she have lived? What would she think of him now? No. My friend is dead. Of that I am certain. The thing in front of me is not Anakin Skywalker.
You're listening to Flying Casual, a Star Wars podcast. Here's your host, Michael Canterbury.
Star Wars family, welcome to another episode of Flying Casual, a podcast that's pretty big on Star Wars. I mean, we are a big Star Wars show. I'm just going to say it. Not like, we have the biggest audience, but like we're big on Star Wars. So if you're listening for the first time, welcome. Hopefully you're big into Star Wars because it's an all Star Wars podcast. Apologies for the delayed episode this week, Casual fam. When you dabble in the dark side, sometimes Sith happens. Sometimes there's Sith plots, and sometimes this podcast is plagued with them. And sometimes you have an epic 40-minute conversation and realize you're not recording. So apologize to our family about that, but hopefully this one goes smoothly, and I'm sure it will, and this conversation will be twice as epic as the last one. And a Casual fam, I am joined with me, as usual, while starting off hot already. Sam Adams strikes again. Damn you, Sam. I am joined by the lovely Holly. Holly, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good.
Good? A quiet evening for Holly tonight.
This is a quiet evening for me tonight, so I apologize. I'm not on my A game today.
Maybe coming down with, a sickness, hopefully not COVID, but a somber Holly who will just bring some straight Star Wars knowledge in a very mellow tone, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. And, fam, we are also joined by our handsome and knowledgeable in-house Star Wars encyclopedia expert, the one and only, the Elder One, Lucas Elder. Sir, how you doing?
Hello. I'm full of the wild berry jamble.
Oh, that's what I'm talking. I mean, Luke, that thing is, I mean, let's get a look at that. That thing is blood red. It is as if you are drinking a pint of blood with a little foam on the top. Which maybe blood is foamy in a mug. I don't know, Holly. Have you ever seen blood in a mug?
Not in a mug, but I've seen blood, and it shouldn't be foamy.
Well, put it in a cold mug. Maybe it foam. I don't know.
Luke likes his blood a little carbonated.
Yeah, that's what it is, Luke. You're actually just
a little bubbly.
A little bubbly in your bubbly. And folks, I hope you are also having a little bubbly of your own while listening. Likely most of you are on the job on your Wednesday, so maybe you're not getting to enjoy that bubbly, but in time you will, I assure you. And folks, at the beginning of this podcast, you heard an excerpt from a story from a novel from Cavan Scott out of the Star Wars from a Certain Point of View, Star Wars' 40th anniversary book that, had a huge compilation of stories from various authors. And you're probably wondering, Mike, why are you referencing and creating a stunning narrative there at the beginning for us listeners? Why are you doing this? It's a 2017 novel, Holly. Like what could possibly be so interesting from something from 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Well, folks, let me tell you, to understand the future and the present, sometimes you have to go to the past. So lately in Star Wars, people are talking about the Kenobi series, and there's rumors about Anakin Skywalker and Hayden Christensen reprising his role as Anakin and Darth Vader, and there's talks of the Bad Batch and things like that. But and thinking of Kenobi, I was brought back to Cavan Scott's story from 2017, and folks, this is one of the best stories out of this entire anthology of stories here from these authors. Maybe not the best, but one of the best. So it's a story from the point of view of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it all takes place from the time he confronted Vader to his death. A very short period of time, Holly. We're talking maybe 5 lines in this moment of a few minutes of Star Wars and A New Hope, and that's what this moment focuses on. But in this moment, as Obi-Wan approaches Vader, and even through to his death, he has visions. He has flashbacks. So much happens in this matter of minutes of Obi-Wan's life. When people talk about them seeing, their life kind of flash before them, before their death, that is what we're talking about here with Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it's titled, the story is called Time of Death, which it's kind of funny, but not what I was expecting just reading the title. But this is one of the best stories in here. I strongly encourage you to go read it for yourself. And that's what we're going to talk about today, along with the Bad Batch. But I really want to focus on this story of Time of Death and Obi-Wan. And honestly, folks, how I think this is almost a blueprint for what we're going to see in the Disney Plus series for Kenobi, that 6-part series that we're expecting here in the near future at some point from Star Wars. So if you read this, I mean, Holly, there's a lot of flashbacks. There's a lot of reading between the lines. You got to pick this up. Am I overselling this? Were you blown away? What did you think?
I don't think that I was blown away.
Okay.
I do think that there was a lot going on. I think that it was a very emotional read. Mm-hmm. That's not just the sickness talking.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that, I think you kind of get to do like a deep dive into Obi-Wan's mind in, how many pages was that? 8 pages?
Yeah.
Maybe. So if Obi-Wan is one of your favorite characters, I think that you'd really like to pick this up and read and kind of get a better feel for what's going on in those moments, because you see it on screen, but you don't really get to feel it on screen the same way that you do when you're reading it on paper.
Absolutely. A vulnerable Obi-Wan, right? Like, Obi-Wan seems pretty stoic, and that's a lot of Alec Guinness coming out in his acting, but a vulnerable Obi-Wan, a scared Obi-Wan. Before we get into the details of those flashbacks and how we think it could relate to the Kenobi series, Luke, you read this a while back, and I know we had an attempted conversation last night. A conversation nonetheless, just not a recorded conversation. But I know we'll get into all the thoughts we had last night, but you read this a while back. I mean, what did you think after reading this thing? You know, are you on the more side of Holly? You weren't as blown away. It was interesting. Or are you feeling it like me, like completely blown away by this? Let's go.
Well, Michael, I'm having trouble forming thoughts about this Obi-Wan story because
Let's
I'm
go.
still reeling from the revelation that 2017 was 3 years ago.
It's scary. It's
I could
scary.
have sworn it was like 2032 by now. But no, I think it's powerfully written. How it pulls together so many threads of Obi-Wan's story.
Yeah.
And all the deep traumatic emotions he feels when encountering Anakin again for the first time since Mustafar, maybe.
Yeah.
Depending on where the Obi-Wan series goes, you know, there's a lot of speculation about, can Vader pop in there? Can they meet again, cross paths in some way in between there?
Yeah.
But at the very least, you know, their first meeting in a long time. So I think Cavan Scott does a brilliant job with the writing. He did the writing for Dooku Jedi Lost, the audio drama, which is an excellent listen if you haven't checked that out. And I think he's slated to do some stuff in the High Republic era.
Oh yeah.
You know, books and comics and everything that's coming out. So look forward to that based off of his work so far.
Yeah, he's one to not share, you know, overwhelming detail about his projects, but he did tweet out just today or the other day that he is working on starting to map out his thoughts for the High Republic. So yeah, like, I mean, for such a short period of time that he's dealing with, I mean, he was blown away that he got to, I was reading some of his own blog, and when he learned he got to write Obi-Wan, he was blown away. And then to hear like, hey, so we're giving you, because this is what Star Wars does. It takes little moments and fills it in with a story. Not so much that it wants to, you know, you don't want to fill too much. We've talked out in the past. You don't want to fill in too much story there. If you do so, it could cause concern for either canon as we know it or, you know, future stories that we want to tell. You don't want to throw too much in there. So I'm sure when he learned, hey, you have a couple of minutes of time that you're dealing with, I mean, it's total flashbacks at that point, but what he does is just, it's beautiful in my opinion. And you kind of have to, it gets confusing at times, right, Holly? You're in present time on the Death Star, and then there's a flashback to Obi-Wan in his younger years, and then we're back on the Death Star, and then we're on Mustafar. Like, there's just, you know, it's kind of that back and forth you have to get used to. But I mean, in 8 pages, it actually, you know, fleshes out a lot here. So let's get into some of these flashbacks that he has, because they vary, guys. I mean, we have Obi-Wan, a younger version of himself, delivering Luke to the Lars family on their homestead there on Tatooine, handing over Luke to Owen. And Owen, actually, they have the actual confrontation, not a confrontation. I guess
it was a confrontation.
Right? I mean, says, yeah, Obi-Wan explains what, you know, happened. And Owen says, well, okay, I'll raise the kid, but you're going to have nothing to do with him. If you're going to be on Tatooine, you're going to be far away. You're not going to be around this kid. And, you know, Obi-Wan does it. So that's one of the flashbacks we get. We get him witnessing Qui-Gon, as painful as it was, succumbing to his wounds from Maul there on Naboo when his master is struck down by the Sith Lord there. You know, painful experiences. Obi-Wan even says he has a flashback to a funeral pyre for Darth Maul. That blew me away. I'm thinking, wait, who threw that? Who was the only individual around there at Maul's end? And it's Obi-Wan. Holly, you and I talked about this a little bit. We all talked about it a little bit last night, but I was blown away after reading this, because you think about the things that Obi-Wan's been through. A lot of those really hard times that he's been through are at the hands of Darth Maul. People talk about Anakin and Luke going through so much, experiencing so much hardship. And then you go back in Obi-Wan's, and this is what this book did a great job of. It reminds you of all the pain and the suffering that Obi-Wan's gone through. And then we hear that he apparently had a little funeral pyre for Maul. Ollie, how did you take that news? Were you surprised?
No. I don't remember exactly what I said when we talked about it before, but I just feel like that was, to me, very characteristic of Obi-Wan, because when I think back to that moment in Rebels when, you know, he struck Darth Maul down, and then they have that moment where Obi-Wan is cradling him as he's saying, like, he will avenge us, I think is what he says, talking about Luke.
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like, I think Luke said, you know, there was some intimacy there that you feel. And so based on that moment and that ending to that scene alone, it wasn't surprising to me that then he would have a funeral pyre for him. But
yeah, Luke, I mean, Obi-Wan's nemesis, this, you know, annoying, no longer Sith Lord, you know, wannabe bandit. He's always around, and Obi-Wan always seems to defeat him. And Maul has so much hatred for him throughout Clone Wars and through Rebels, but there in his final moments, like Holly said, a gentle moment, almost a moment of all is forgotten. We're actually have the same goal in mind, and then we find out here that he, maybe not a celebration of Maul, but a sign of respect, you know, creating a pyre here and burning him as the Jedi do for fallen Jedi. We saw Qui-Gon go through that. So, I mean, were you shocked by that as much as I was?
Yeah, this was a huge moment to reflect on for me when we started the conversation last night, and it just struck me so strongly, the juxtaposition between, you know, Obi-Wan's caressing of Maul in an intimate way, in a compassionate way, as he is expiring, and they sort of share that moment together.
Yeah.
And to compare that to how he feels about Anakin at this point.
Yeah.
Where, you know, he says, you know, he says on the Death Star to him in this scene, right? Like, you're pure evil or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he tells Luke, like, you just have to go kill him. There's no option. There's no good left in him.
Yeah.
You got to go kill your father. You know, that's what he tells him in Return of the Jedi. So it was striking to me to think about the differences in the way that he feels about these two, you know, who have caused him such pain. Maul caused him the pain of losing Qui-Gon, losing Satine, and just being a huge, like, thorn in his side for so long. And I, as I've thought more about it after our conversation yesterday, and Holly and you made some good points along these lines, it was, you know, it was much more personal for him with Anakin. I think he expected more from Anakin, had a deeper personal connection with Anakin, so Anakin's turn hurt a lot more and scarred him a lot more.
Absolutely.
Whereas Maul, he always looked at as kind of this evil, I want to say almost beast. I was watching, I've been watching a lot of Clone Wars. I've been back heavy into my Clone Wars rewatch lately. And I've just earlier today was watching some of Savage Opress's first couple episodes, Maul's brother. And in the episodes, Obi-Wan refers to him as a beast.
Yeah.
And so I think he feels that way a little bit about Maul. Like, I don't expect more from him. He's beastly. So it doesn't surprise me, or I can sort of like comprehend why he does the horrible things he does.
Yeah.
But with Anakin, yeah, you were my brother.
Yeah.
You were supposed to bring balance to the Force. You're supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. That hurt and scarred so much more deeply than the wrongs that Maul perpetrated on Obi-Wan.
Yeah, Maul grew up in darkness. He was raised by the Sith Lord. That's what we expect of him. I can forgive him for that. He had no chance. But Anakin was the chosen one. He was supposed to destroy the Sith. And this prophecy that everyone proclaimed, and that Obi-Wan was probably the only one who seemed to even doubt it until Yoda did there at the end. But, I mean, his future was already told. He would save the Jedi. He would save the light. He would save the Republic. And it's interesting because in another one of his visions, he goes back to the end of Revenge of the Sith where Padme is giving birth to the twins. And he says, He witnesses a woman lying on her bed, her last breath shallow, and she says, "There's good in him." And he says, did she really believe that after everything he had done? If she did, why wouldn't she still be here? Wouldn't she have lived? What would she think of him now? And he says, "No, my friend is dead. Of that I am certain. The thing in front of me is not Anakin Skywalker." He separates the two. It's as if Anakin and everything about him died there on Mustafar. He left him there.
I think something that's striking in this that we kind of talked about before was there's that line in the story where he calls him Darth, and I think we've had this conversation before where it's, why would he just refer to him as Darth? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And something this story kind of said that made sense to me is he says he calls him Darth. He can't call him by his full name because that would break him.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that just shows how even after all this time, it's such a raw thing for him to be going through still and to recall and remember. As much as he spent all this time in isolation, he still hasn't had time to really work through the emotions from losing Anakin in that way.
You're absolutely right. He says, and that's the funny thing, Star Wars does such a great job of taking these moments where at the time his name was probably just Darth Vader, the Sith Lord. And then as time passed and George Lucas was writing more stories, like, actually, you know what? That Darth is going to be the title for a Sith Lord. And we're going to have Darth Maul. And we're going to have Darth Plagueis. And we're going to have Darth Sidious. But it's great what Cavan Scott does here. He says, only a master of evil, Darth. And Obi-Wan says, I cannot use his real name. It would undo me.
Yeah.
Even after all this time, catching it in my throat. The time for talk is at an end. This must be decided once and for all. He says he caught it in his throat as if he's still in the moment up until his death. He's grappling with this man versus machine. He acknowledges Vader's strength and his cybernetic being and how strong he is, but he still grapples with the fact, is Anakin in there? I almost called him Anakin, it seems. And maybe that's why I just ran my mouth and said Darth, because I almost called him Anakin, and that would mean that I couldn't strike. I couldn't do what was necessary like I had to do on Mustafar after all these years. The confrontation he'd been expecting for so long, and like you said, Holly, was still not prepared for it. I'm just like blown away. Talking about all of this, it just blows me away. So, and then he has more flashbacks. He has flashbacks of him training Anakin with sticks, and Anakin's complaining that he doesn't get to use a lightsaber and he's ready for combat. And Obi-Wan's like, patience, you're not ready. Like, you're a little brat. Like, chill out. Your time will come. And we talked about him coming to the Lars farm. And then there's this big moment where he sees himself lying on a bed, tossing and turning, and a voice calls out to him. I can't recall exactly what the voice says, but he senses that Luke Skywalker is in trouble. And he sees himself wake up, and the only word that he utters out of his mouth when he wakes up is Luke.
Well, he says, go to him.
Go to him.
That's
right.
What the
voice says, and he responds, yes, master. I mean, we're talking, I'm assuming, about Qui-Gon, Holly. Is that what you're thinking there in that moment? Qui-Gon speaking to him through the Force?
I think you thought it was somebody else. I thought it was Qui-Gon. I think it checks out.
Yeah, there's definitely some room for interpretation, because we know from a certain point of view here in the Obi-Wan and Yoda discussion of Leia and Luke and who's ready, who's not ready, and who's the chosen one, this and that. He's communicating with Obi-Wan or Yoda's communicating with Obi-Wan somehow through the Force. I don't think they're have a secret meeting place there on Dagobah that they're hanging out, and then Obi-Wan's getting a red eye back to Tatooine. I don't think that's the case. So there may be some communication through their force. That's why I thought it could be open for interpretation, but I think you're right. I think he's been training. I think Yoda prepared him for that training, and he's probably been training with Qui-Gon. And so Qui-Gon telling him, hey, the Chosen One's in trouble. You got to go.
And something that I liked about that moment is because in that time in the story, he says it's a voice that he hasn't heard for years, right? Or hasn't been that loud for years.
I think that was the second instance where but you're right. He senses, he has another voice speak to him later on. And we'll definitely get to that towards the end of the flashbacks, but you're right. I don't recall what page it was on. So he hears this voice. He runs to his, God, I don't know what they are. Does anyone recall what they were? They're like a camel.
AOP or something.
Yeah. He runs, hops on his animal, and is headed straight for the Lars farm. And he witnesses these bandits, like these marauders, who are attacking the Lars farm. This is a memory that he has. And there's 3-year-old Luke Skywalker, terrified. He can't make it back to the homestead, and he can't run. He says he'll be killed either way. I have to intervene. And Obi-Wan does. Whips out his lightsaber, starts slashing people left and right, cutting people in half. He puts his guard down for one moment, and this Gamorrean starts, which is hysterical. These, we know them to be the guards there on Jabba's palace, not the brightest creatures. We saw it, Holly, in Clone Wars recently, guarding that gate, easily convinced to lose their focus, not the smartest creatures, probably not the best warriors. But going to attack Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's guard is down, and all of a sudden, the Gamorrean is distracted by something, and it turns out little Luke Skywalker threw his toy, whatever it was, a Skyhopper or a Starfighter, whatever it was, hit the Gamorrean, distracted him, gave Obi-Wan an opportunity to turn and destroy the Gamorrean. And Obi-Wan says, he saved my life. Luke Skywalker saved my life. And in that moment, the Lars family is witnessing this, and they're terrified because Luke didn't run in that situation. Luke ran towards Obi-Wan to save him. And you can tell that they're starting to sense he's got a lot of father. He has a lot of his father in him. And this could be trouble. So Owen walks up to Obi-Wan, punches him in the face.
Come
on, let's talk about it.
Because this is something that doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, why?
They didn't want him to begin with.
You're right.
They didn't care. They didn't want anything to do with him. And then he's like, okay, well, we'll take him, but the condition is you don't exist.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're going to get this protective. And I just don't, maybe this is just me and I'm the only one who felt this way, but I just feel like it just didn't sit right with me that all of a sudden he walked up to him and just punched him in the face in front of this child who he was trying to protect from violence.
Well,
and he didn't care about him enough to want him in the beginning. So that reaction just didn't sit right with me.
Well, you got to remember, the Lars family has lost a lot. They've lost Shmi. They've lost their father. I mean, Anakin, Owen says it himself here. When he confronts Obi-Wan in that moment, he says, haven't you people done enough to this family? You people. It's almost as if he's referencing Anakin. Anakin going out and slaying the Tusken Raiders. Obi-Wan even speaks to fearing that the Tusken Raiders are trying to seek revenge for what his father, the sins of the father, have done to this family. And so they've lost a lot. And they're fearful that, this is the only family they have left. We can't possibly lose him as well. Luke, were you kind of feeling that way about it? I mean, it's kind of jarring because you jump from time periods, and he does seem a little reluctant to take on Luke in the beginning. But, I mean, after 3 years of knowing probably this is really the only family you have left, Owen says, I've been protecting him for years when you weren't around. Like, I don't need your help now. Like, were you were there some, it was a little uneasy at times, wasn't it?
Yeah, Owen's an interesting character, and we get so little of him in the movies when you really think about it. I mean, he barely in the prequels, the young version has like a line or two, maybe, you know, you don't get a lot. And then the drop off scene, you know, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, there's no dialogue. It's just, here you go. Here's the kid.
Yeah.
And so really so much of what we have to go on is just the kind of gruff, you know, Owen we get in A New Hope.
Yeah.
And so much of everything is based off of the few lines that he really has in the end, other than talking about, you know, which droids to buy and things like that. But the lines about his personality and the way he feels about Luke and Obi-Wan, which is, I think, is a brilliant part of this book, and just a good advertisement for the book in general, is how much these authors pull out of tiny moments in the movie, 30 seconds in the movie, a minute in the movie, one line in the movie. You know, I think so much of canon around Owen is just based off of him calling Obi-Wan a crazy old wizard. Yeah. And so then you had to spin out this whole backstory about like a friction between the two of them, and him feeling that, Obi-Wan's a bad influence and he just needs to stay away because Luke will be better off without this whole Jedi nonsense. What I'm struggling with a little bit, though, is, well, Holly, were you saying that the Lars didn't want Luke? What is that, like, where does that come from?
It was just the interaction that they have in the beginning of the story.
Oh, okay.
Obi-Wan drops him off, and he, like, that family doesn't want the child. And Obi-Wan has to, like, to me, the way that I interpreted it was that Obi-Wan pretty much begging them to take the child. And so then Owen is like, okay, fine, we'll take him, but only under one condition. It has to be under my condition, and that's that you don't exist anymore.
Well, and that he can know nothing of his father, he said.
Yeah.
So I think Obi-Wan told him everything, right?
Yeah.
I think that what that speaks to is just kind of his cautious nature, Owen's cautious nature and wanting to protect his family. Yeah. And when this baby first shows up on his doorstep that he has no idea about, he doesn't immediately view it as family. Yeah. And so he's thinking of himself and Beru and protecting them. Yeah. But he comes around, I think, to accepting him as family, but saying the only way for me to protect him, protect me and Beru, is for you, Obi-Wan, to stay away because you're trouble and your people are trouble. Yeah. So I think it's just, he's one of these people who seems like really insular to me. Like, he's not going to maybe have empathy with many people outside of his very closed circle. Yeah. But if he lets you into that circle, I think he really does care about Luke and wants what's best for him. He just might not want what we think is best for Luke from our point of view.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Owen probably hasn't seen a ton of the galaxy either, and to him, like, keeping him on this farm, not interacting with anyone. So you even pick that up in A New Hope when we meet Owen for the first time. He's kind of a dick. Like, he just kind of is. He's kind of rude to people, just like, kind of get off my property, we'll take the droids. Luke, go back out and fix evaporators. Like, it's just a simple life, and it's, you know, to detract from attention. But it's kind of mind-blowing that, like, Obi-Wan told him everything. He told him what happened to Anakin. He told him he's now this pure evil. He can never know what became of his father. He just can't. Whether he thinks that, you know, Anakin survived there on Mustafar, I don't know. But he said, this is what this heritage is capable of. And then Owen's like, well, then you can't be around because Anakin became that in your presence. He became evil with you as his mentor. If you were to also fail this one, we'd be in the same situation here.
But then he, like, I don't know. I'm not buying it.
It could be the cold. It could be.
No, then he's like getting all mad at Obi-Wan. Like, bro, he just saved your nephew, and you claim to be doing such a good job of raising him and protecting him, and yet you weren't there.
Hey, that's fair. No, I can definitely sense a reluctance to take on this child. Hey, Beru and I got this thing going on here at the farm. Like, we don't know really what the future holds. Maybe I'm going to run off and do something else for a living, and now you're throwing this child on me?
Well, it just seems like an odd reaction to punch someone in the face who just, like, whether you want them, like, I don't know.
Well, and
because he tells Obi-Wan, he's like, I will protect him. Like, I'm the only one who will do this.
Well, that's the thing. So Obi-Wan says that too. Like, I was trying to help you. And he says, we don't need your help. I've been fighting off bandits for years without your help. We're fine without you. Your presence, like I said, has brought more pain to this family than anything. And the fact, this is what ends up hurting Obi-Wan the most. This is why in this moment he actually says, I failed Luke. And he's fearing there in his final moments on the Death Star before he sees Luke, he's like, I failed him again. So in that moment where Luke is running towards him to help out and to save him, to him that was him failing Luke. Like Luke was getting into the fight when he was just trying to keep him out of it. And so you're right, Obi-Wan didn't put up with it. He's like, dude, I was trying to help you. He's like, we don't need it. And Obi-Wan's like, yeah, you're right. I'm just causing more trouble. I failed him. This wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. It's deep stuff, guys. And I think a lot of this is going to tell us exactly what Obi-Wan is going to get into in this Kenobi series. But before we get really into that discussion, I want to bring up another point. Luke, you were talking about the moment they take these moments in time and they tell such an awesome story. It's such a small moment in time and tell such an awesome story. I thought this was really, really emotional, where Obi-Wan was talking about, hearing Padme say there's good in him and stuff. And he says, no, my friend is dead. Of that I am certain. The thing in front of me is not Anakin Skywalker. And Vader says, the circle is now complete. The usurper declares his arrogance, the final betrayal. When I left you, I was but the learner. And Obi-Wan says emphatically, when I left you, like I destroyed you. You didn't leave me. And he says, every word's a trigger, dragging me back and forth through the years. I'm standing on loose scree, a river of molten lava churning below. Is this where you left me, Darth? Or was it even earlier, when you leapt onto a speeder bike and raced into the night? Or when you held Padme by the throat? I feel my anger rising, my years of training, of discipline ebbing away. I barely hear what he's saying. Such a small moment where Obi-Wan seems to, be keeping his cool and tapping into the Force to become one with the Netherworld. Yet we find out he's struggling with darkness, with ignoring all of his training and losing sight of what he's trying to accomplish here. He can't even see straight at this point. He doesn't know if he's on Mustafar or if he's there on the Death Star. I mean, Luke, are you blown away by the level of detail and how we are in Obi-Wan's mind here?
Yeah, that's brilliant to play with that line of when I left you. It's like it so grates him because like the only reason there's anything left of Anakin is because Obi-Wan chose to turn and walk away and didn't just kind of like behead him or something to finish the job like Anakin did to Dooku.
Yeah.
And so then for Vader to phrase it in that way, when I left you, oh, you mean when I left you smoking and smoldering on the lava shore?
Yeah.
That's such a fun thing to have sort of, the author saying, oh, Vader was sort of retconning that history to make him sound better in the telling of it.
Yep.
But I guess you can like Obi-Wan, it kind of says that you can interpret it in several different ways.
Yeah.
When I left you, like when I turned to the dark side, maybe is more an accurate depiction of what he's referencing. So yeah, at what moment did he turn away from his master figuratively by going down a path that Obi-Wan and Padme wouldn't follow him down,
Yeah.
So many ways to interpret these lines and take them all these different directions. It's amazing how so many of the stories in this collection do such a brilliant job of like just dissecting every single line from every angle, and giving you these fun things to chew on.
And it's reminiscent of Ben Solo, right? Kylo Ren was following in his grandfather's footsteps when he talks to his father there. He's like, you're still my son. Your son's gone. I destroyed him. He was weak and foolish like his father. And it's almost like in this moment, Darth Vader's like, well, of course you destroyed Anakin Skywalker. He was weak. I have now reached my full potential, and I am the master. And it's that little telling there by Obi-Wan separates the two even more in my eyes. Like Anakin as Darth Vader completely thinking, yeah, I'm way more powerful than you. And Obi-Wan's like, I left you there on Mustafar burning. Like, what? Like, it's just two different people there to Obi-Wan. He continues on with this confusion that he's experiencing in this moment. And he says, is this power, this torture? I am like a leaf tossed in a storm, the present and the past crashing together. I can no longer tell what is real and what is a distant memory brought into sharp relief. It's a crazy moment for Obi-Wan. He says, Luke is safe. Luke is in danger. I am on Tatooine. I am on the battle station. And in this moment, right before his death, he almost starts damning Yoda. Yoda apparently led him to believe that becoming one with the Force was going to be way different than this experience. And he says, it shouldn't be like this. This is not what Yoda promised me. I am being overwhelmed. The past, the present, even the future. And here we learn that Obi-Wan Kenobi, sees the future clear as day. No interpretation needed. He tells us pretty much the entire sequel trilogy here in this one moment. He says, the past, the present, even the future, I see things that are not yet to be. Leia slumped beside a console, her heart breaking. Captain Solo falling so far. Evil triumphant, and then vanquished, and then rising again. And he continues and says, and worst of all, Luke, as I am now an old man, his face creased, his eyes haunted. He's cut off from those who love him, consumed by regret and sorrow. It is too much to bear, a future I never want to see. It's the saddest thing I've ever read in Star Wars. A future, it's like this moment, Obi-Wan is ready to go. I don't want to be a part of this future. I have done so much to cause all of this pain that hasn't even happened yet. I can't even bear to see it any longer. Holly, are you blown away that Obi-Wan is having such a profound moment seeing the future? Were you shocked by this?
I mean, yeah, I think that's probably like my favorite part of the whole story, but it wasn't that part.
Yeah, come on, pick it up. It's close to that part.
Oh God, I don't even know where you were reading that from.
It's up in there somewhere.
Okay, anyway.
Yeah.
The part that I liked was where he was upset with Yoda, where he felt like Yoda like led him astray.
Yeah. And like, well, that's the thing. Like, what did Yoda teach him? He doesn't really say. He just says it was nothing like this.
Because I feel like, in part, I don't know, maybe Obi-Wan's one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, but I feel like to some extent he kind of did this to himself.
Yeah.
And hindsight's 20/20, I get that, but Obi-Wan put himself and he put everybody else in these situations, and I think that in the moment he did think that what he was doing was best, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I just kind of feel like we know that because we've seen everything that happens.
Yeah.
And he hadn't seen it up to that point, and then he does see it, but by then it's too late.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like it doesn't matter if he leaves in that moment or not. Those moments are still going to happen that he saw happening in the future, and he can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But he could have.
He could have, but so here's the thing. At the last moment where, you know, he knows he's outnumbered here, the stormtroopers show up, Vader's got him. He talks about battling with Vader, how strong Vader is. He says Vader's toying with him, so to speak. He can't escape this. And he says, let's see. He says, he's talking about Luke. He sees Luke. He says he needs more than a toy fighter this time. He needs to escape, to save himself, not me. And this, Holly, is the moment where you were talking about where he hears a voice say, "Go to him."
Yeah.
And he said, "The voice in my head is louder than it has been for years." And he responds, "Yes, master. I'm an old man. Even if I tried, I couldn't outrun a blaster shot. Not anymore. I'll never make it to Luke's side in time to save him." So he's accepted the only way he can help Luke get out of here is making this ultimate sacrifice.
And that's, I think I said this last night too, which nobody else heard.
Come on.
But you're hearing it now. I like that moment a lot because I feel like, you know, that does show you that Qui-Gon's been speaking to Obi-Wan this whole time, right? And he's still been there and he's still been a mentor.
Yeah.
And then in that moment in this story, you almost feel a little sense of peace when this is how I interpreted it. When Qui-Gon said, "Go to him," he meant like, it is okay for you to let go because you can do this. What I'm doing for you right now, you have the knowledge and you have the ability to do this for Luke. To still give him that guidance that you weren't able to give him when he was with Owen. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably tough for Obi-Wan to believe that, right, though? I mean, I don't know. Luke, it's easy for Qui-Gon to see all of this happening and to know what Obi-Wan needs to do in this moment to make the sacrifice to further help Luke in his journey. And then his journey here, you know, is over, but his journey to come is just beginning. Are we going to see these interactions in the Kenobi series? Are we going to get Liam Neeson coming back? And also, are we going to see Qui-Gon also a little distraught from what he's put Obi-Wan through? You have to feel for Qui-Gon even in this moment. Like, this is my Padawan. I left him here. He's become a great Jedi, but look at this burden that he bears, that he's been bearing all of these years. What do you think, Luke? We'll start talking about what we're expecting from this Kenobi series now with all this knowledge we have that Cavan, Scott has bestowed on us. What do you think we're going to experience here in some communication with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan? What's that going to be like?
I definitely think there's a huge opening for a lot of Qui-Gon in the Obi-Wan series, and I hope the creators of the show, the writers, Deborah Chow, who's slated to direct it, are including that in their planning, and hopefully Liam Neeson is on board to, even if it's just voiceover and you never see him, or if we get the whole blue glowy experience with Qui-Gon, I'm leaning more and more towards expecting it, which is a dangerous thing to do because you don't want to kind of let your expectations get ahead of you, and you want to enjoy what comes out. Yeah. But I definitely think there's a huge opening and purpose and role for Qui-Gon in the Obi-Wan series coming up. And like what's interesting to me about Qui-Gon as a Jedi compared to so many other Jedi characters that we see throughout this story, and it connects back to a couple episodes ago when we were talking a bit about Luke at the end of The Last Jedi, and I was saying I don't think it was sort of exhaustion or depletion of projecting himself to Crate that made him become one with the Force. I felt he thought it was just his time in terms of he'd done what he could do to help the light side in the physical form, and it was just time for him to move on. Yeah. And I think the same thing here with Obi-Wan. He'd done what he could physically. It was time for him to let go. Whereas Qui-Gon, he didn't make that decision. Yeah. Maul violently ended him.
You're right.
He doesn't get that kind of transition to say it's my time to go. So he still has I don't know, more unfinished business than the rest of them when they go. And so I think he is could be the most active Force ghost of all. Yeah. He still had a lot of influence to give.
Absolutely. I mean, and one of the first that we think to really make that transition into what some of us call like the netherworld of the Force. Holly, what are you expecting from these moments maybe that will get Master and Apprentice back together again?
I don't want to see Liam Neeson.
Oh, hot take. Let's go.
But I do want to hear him.
Yeah.
I think that will be really crucial to seeing, or maybe just like very brief moments, getting, fewer moments of hearing him. Because really what I want, and I say this every time we podcast about speculating, like Luke just said, I do not go into things with expectations.
That's good.
I don't. But since you're asking me
yes, I am.
to have an expectation, I really want to feel that despair and that loneliness from Obi-Wan. But then I think that's tricky because we know that his story doesn't end well. And if Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau say that Star Wars has to be a story of hope, I kind of feel like I'm not really going to get that.
Nope.
So, I don't know. I kind of just want to see Obi-Wan go through it, but...
Now, Holly, I couldn't agree with you more. And here's why. I have been calling for a very not hopeful, just disparaging Kenobi story. I want Obi-Wan at his knees. And if I, didn't believe it then, I believe it now after reading this story. Obi-Wan is conflicted with his past, his purpose for the future, the loss of his brother. There's so much he's going through. I just want it to be miserable for him.
Well, here's the thing.
In the best way possible.
Yeah, because that's the thing with Obi-Wan is that he's a very relatable and believable character. People say, Luke Skywalker is so relatable, this and that. But to me, I think that Obi-Wan is one of those characters because he tries to do things by the book. He's a big stickler for the rules. He wants to do things the right way, but it always backfires on him.
It does.
And no matter what he tries to do from from the heart, it just doesn't work out for him. And I feel like that's so true for a lot of people. I feel like that's why eventually people are like, screw it, I'm just going to do whatever I want them. But Obi-Wan doesn't really get to that point.
Yeah.
He still tries to play by the rules, and then he puts it all on him when it goes wrong. And I feel like I know a lot of people like that. I'm trying to do the right thing. It doesn't work out. It's probably my fault. So I'm going to punish myself for it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And he is one of the most complex characters up there with Darth Maul at this point on the opposite side. And you mentioned, Qui-Gon, Liam Neeson not making an appearance. I actually think that could be way more impactful. I know everyone wants to see Liam Neeson again, just like they wanted to see Hayden Christensen. I think that's awesome. There's rumors out there. That's why we're talking about this, that Hayden Christensen could be making a comeback here in the series. And you know what? If they're going to do it, that's cool. And, would it be cool to see Liam Neeson again? Sure, that'd be awesome. But to be honest, if we're going to get flashbacks like this, as impactful as they can be, and then hearing Liam Neeson, I thought it was so cool when Anakin was cutting down the Tusken Raiders. You just hear Qui-Gon yell out, "Anakin, no." I thought that was amazing. And it's almost like everyone's expecting Qui-Gon to show up. I honestly think it would be way more impactful to have to listen to the wisdom that Qui-Gon is going to pass on.
Well, not even just that, but if we're reading this story, and I think that one of the things that we all really liked about this was that moment when he hears
Let's go
Qui-Gon, and he's like, that's the loudest.
He didn't see him.
That I've heard that voice. I feel like if you have this Obi-Wan show where you actually see Qui-Gon, it takes away from those moments in the storyline that we're getting here about why it was so important that Qui-Gon would come to him in those final moments. I feel like if he's going to see him and have those interactions, like those physical interactions with him as a Force ghost or otherwise throughout the series, it kind of negates that in the book.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I think it would kind of contradict us a little bit, but I think you're right. And I also think it would be way more impactful. And you know what? I'm sure we all thought that Obi-Wan, obviously he's been through some stuff we see from the movies. He's lost his master. He loses his brother. And we all know he ends up being that hermit there on Tatooine. Obviously, things don't seem to be going so well for Obi-Wan. But what this book really did for me is it really showed me, like in The Last Jedi, what a burden it is to be the master, right? Almost like he has to let Luke come up on his own and let, kind of like Cal does, spoiler alert, let the Force decide. I've intervened so much, and you know what? It's just caused a bunch of crap. I'm going to have to put this aside, and I'm going to have to let the Force bring this one up and hope that he becomes the hope that we all need in this moment. And you know what else it does? It shows me the burden of, being that master, but it shows me just how similar Luke in The Last Jedi, how similar he became to his old master, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, boy, a dark place Obi-Wan was going into, losing his teachings, maybe not be able to control himself in that moment. It's a similar sacrifice that Luke was making, right? Cut himself off from the people that he loved. Had to. It's what he had to do. Had to go to that place, had to hit rock bottom to know what his purpose was in the future. I love it. It to me, it intertangles. It connects those two characters. Even it makes their relationship in the short time they had together even more impactful. And a lot of that time they had together, Luke didn't even realize because he was so small and Obi-Wan was so far away.
Which is funny that you say that because, we mentioned like Luke, like, oh no, he's going to follow in his father's footsteps, but ultimately like he follows in Obi-Wan's.
Does. It's Yoda told him, that's like failure. It's one of the best lessons. Obi-Wan struggled with that. Our younglings they're what's the quote? They are what, Luke, do you recall what that is? They become
we are what they grow beyond or something like that.
We are what they grow beyond. Wow. I mean, in my eyes, Cavan Scott knocked us out of the park. It connects so much for me. And guys, I'm telling you right now, this is a blueprint for the Kenobi series. I don't want Kenobi out fighting monsters, on some remote planet. I want him on Tatooine. If he fights some bandits, that's awesome. He actually says here, I heard rumors of marauders coming, and I did nothing. Luke never would have been put in this situation if I wouldn't have failed, and I would have acted when my instincts told me to. He's going through so much on this remote farm desert planet. It's so crazy. So there's a lot we can do with here, We may see him whip out a lightsaber every now and then, but I want to see an aging Obi-Wan, an Obi-Wan tormented by his past, unknowing of what his future is and what purpose he serves now. I'm supposed to protect this kid. His family doesn't even want me around. I'm going to do my best to do what I can, but I'm going to have to trust in the Force on this one. And you know what? I'm learning this stuff from Obi-Wan, I'm learning from Qui-Gon and Yoda, and what they're telling me ain't panning out. What does my future hold? Takes a leap of faith. Luke, do you have any more final words, man, on this story and what you think we could, it could tie in with any, future stories from Lucasfilm?
I think I might be tapped out. We've been Obi-Wan and hard.
God, and I love it so much. He's a complex character, and I mean, give me 10 hours of a Kenobi series to get to really flesh this story out, and I am down. I don't necessarily need anyone else showing up. I don't really need the Bad Batch showing up to offer a hand to Obi-Wan Kenobi at any point. I really don't. And guys, I'm going to tell you right now, I expected to talk about the Bad Batch tonight. I had every intention of talking about it, but we just went 58 minutes talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. And what did you say, Holly? An 8-page story?
Yeah.
Out of an anthology? Are you kidding me? I could talk all day about it, guys, and that's why I don't even want to get into the Bad Batch right now, because I don't feel like I'm going to do it justice. Right, Holly?
That's right.
It's late. This is take 2. I would say a better take 2 than take 1.
I agree.
Right? Holly, I hope you feel better too. I feel really bad. And like she's like dying over there, just like listening to me talk about Obi-Wan. She's like, end it already.
No, I like Obi-Wan. I said Obi-Wan's one of my favorites.
Absolutely. And I think he is a fan favorite, and that's why I think, I sometimes I want Lucasfilm to look to the future and not so much the past, but like as complex as they've made Maul and they've made Obi-Wan, we need a Kenobi story.
Obi-Wan deserves it.
He does. He's been through a lot.
And they had, sorry, these are my final words about
Come on.
it. I don't think they have any option but to do Obi-Wan after he drops baby Luke off, because we already know his story before that. We see him in the prequels. We see him in Clone Wars.
Yep.
This is what we need.
Absolutely. He's on Tatooine.
Give us the Obi-Wan story that we deserve.
That's right. And unfortunately, guys, it doesn't seem like they're going to use the title from a certain point of view. I thought Kenobi from a certain point of view would be the best title for a Kenobi series, but they've used it quite a bit now, and it just doesn't feel like it's going to happen. But boy, with what we know his story is now, the past, the present, the future, and everything he's seeing from a certain point of view would have hands down been the best title ever. But it doesn't probably seem like we're going to get that. But so, guys, that's all the discussion we had. We do have a few announcements, correct, Holly?
A little housekeeping.
Little housekeeping for you guys. Now, first off, I'll say we are having our next installment of Casual Council this upcoming Saturday, the 25th of July. Is that correct, Holly?
That's correct.
The 25th, the last Saturday for you Jedi Knight and Jedi Master Patreon supporters. So get ready. We're talking about the Force, all of its history. As much as you guys want to talk about the Force, I'll talk about it for 10 hours. So let's have notes. Let's be prepared. Let's be prepared for an epic discussion. I cannot wait to see what everybody brings to the table. And Holly, we have also an announcement about the upcoming book club.
That's
Is that
right.
correct?
I actually have two announcements about book club.
Okay.
The first announcement would be that our book club meeting to talk about Dark Disciple will be Saturday, August 8th.
August 8th.
And that's open for any Patreon donors.
That's right.
To engage
in the discussion. If you read Dark Disciple, you're on Patreon. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And then my second announcement about book club will be that we're going to set a date similarly to what we do with the Casual Council. And that is that the book club discussions are going to be on the second Saturday of every month.
Absolutely.
So going forward, you guys are going to know exactly what day it's going to be on. I think that that's going to be a lot better for everyone who wants to read it, so you kind of know what kind of deadline you're going up against.
Absolutely. A ton of our listeners have other obligations, and a lot of our patrons have families and other obligations. And so we want to give you guys a heads up with those dates and give you a chance to spread things out. We thrive off our Patreon, partners here, just joining these conversations and making them epic, and we want them to be involved. So we're trying to do our best to make it as easy on them as possible, and we want you guys to do that as well, and we want to make it as easy for our listeners to join in the discussion and listening to these book club reviews. It's just going to be a good time. Dark Disciple, a big favorite in the group, Holly.
Yeah.
Big favorite. So cannot wait to talk about that.
I will say, at Luke's recommendation.
Let's go.
Today, when I wasn't feeling so great, I was like laying on the couch and we were like, well, I might as well put some Clone Wars on. So we were watching through some of the episodes in season 3 of Clone Wars, and we watched the episode with Quinlan Vos and Obi-Wan in it, and it met my expectations for what I thought Quinlan Vos.
Wait a second.
What?
You're leaving out a big character for that episode.
Come on, Zero.
Zero.
I can't. I wish I could do a Zero. I was about to go into one impersonation, but I think it would have gone pretty poorly.
Wait, Michael's got one.
It starts to sound like...
You're sounding like Gollum.
Yeah, I have a sick Gollum.
No, Zero sounds like...
I can't. No, it's terrible.
Oh, crap. He sounds like, what's his face on Archer?
Oh, I couldn't tell you who's in Archer.
He's like, okay.
Other than phrasing.
That's embarrassing that you have your phrasing and it came from
Wait, I'll
Archer.
tell you Archer's a character in Archer. I know that much.
Well, Archer is the character.
You're
Ray.
welcome.
Ray, he's very gay and he has
Yes.
that country southern.
You're right. Sounds just like that guy.
Sounds just
You're
like
absolutely
Ray.
right. And that's what's funny, Luke, is that Holly stayed awake for all of that, but then when we got into the Night Sisters and Maul's brother and all that witchcraft, knocked out on the couch. I had to tap her with my finger and say, "Are you alive?" First of all. Second, are you still down to podcast? So she missed out on some of the best of Star Wars, and that's okay. We'll go back and watch it again.
But I have found myself liking to do
naps.
No. My idea of who I would like to play certain people in live action. If,
nice.
Like, you know, if we ever were going to get a live action, like Dark Disciple or anything like that, which we won't. But if we were, I've decided that Quinlan Vos, the perfect actor for him, and I forget his name, so someone can correct me, but the actor who plays Thorin Oakenshield in The Hobbit would be the perfect Quinlan Vos.
We're not great with actors' names.
I'm not really great with
Richard
movies.
Armitage.
Thank you.
That's why we didn't have Luke on for that episode when we were referencing what's her name? The Dragon Mother. Still can't remember her name from Game of Thrones. There it is. Emilia Clarke. I even had Jory text me and say, "Hey, man, that's Emilia Clarke." I was like, "Yeah, I remembered right after the podcast."
This isn't a podcast about actors.
Game of Thrones or actors.
This is a podcast about Star Wars.
Preach it, Holly. You always know how to make me feel better.
There we go.
So thank you. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the heck out of that conversation. I know I did. It got sweaty. It got super sweaty, and I'm not talking about the sweat under my armpits or all over my forehead right now, Holly. It got deep and sweaty in Star Wars lore discussion. Guys, those are the conversations that I love, and I hope you love them too. And if you're loving this kind of stuff, guys, give us a shout out, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's, to your friends. If you got some nerdy friends that are into Star Wars, hey, let them know about Flying Casual. If you want to join our Patreon, get on there, get some extra discussion with us and really get sweaty, go join that. If you can, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go give us a 5-star review if you really like that. It really helps us out with the podcast, helps us, get out there a little more for additional listeners and just, share, Flying Casual if you're willing, however you can. It really helps us out. We really appreciate it. We love interacting with you guys. It's the best part of this podcast. I mean, I could probably sit here and talk about Star Wars to myself, but what I enjoy is that I get to talk about Star Wars with my friends, and it's such an awesome part of my life, and we're going to keep doing it. If you would share that experience with those that may be interested in that as well, I know I would appreciate it, as would Luke and Holly. So we appreciate your listenership and your patronage. We couldn't do this without you. So we thank you from the bottom of our Star Wars hearts. Boy, I need a new shirt and a shower. I'll tell you that, because, boy, it got sweaty talking about Obi-Wan here. Time of Death. If you haven't checked it out from a certain point of view, go get a copy. It's a good one. We'll see you next time. Peace.